Hello everybody. Today's subject is not so much about the heated grips, but if you watched the previous video, I wasn't really happy the way this controller stuck out because they only supply one bracket. I'm not too, you can't be too harsh about that because, it wasn't exactly an expensive set of grips, but I was never really happy with this bracket. So today's subject, I'm going to try and make a new bracket. So I've got hold of a piece of aluminium. It's 1.5 mm thick, and I've worked out with a template that it might be possible to cut out some aluminium and make a new bracket. And what I'll try and do is, this is a template of the original bracket. I've left it a bit thicker here for some strength, and I've pulled it across 2-3 times the width, so it would then sit something like this. Let's see if I can get it into position. It would then sit something like this, and I can bend that forward here, and it'd be just to the left of the brake reservoir over the handlebars. And I think that would be a better position. So I'll whip this one off just to double check some dimensions, and we'll see how we go with this project. Okay, so there's no going back. I've taken the old bracket off here and I've flattened it out as best I can. Well, it's not going to be used now, so we're going to have to push on and get it done because that's where I am now. So anyway, as you can see, with this bracket, it came straight up and there was nowhere to go. So all I've done, I've copied the base plate and just pushed it along and up, so it kind of pushes it by and towards the brake reservoir. And then if we're lucky, we'll be able to do some folds. It's only 1.5 mm, so I imagine it'll fold fairly easily, but and I'm looking to achieve something like this type of shape, obviously this being flat, something like this. So then it would sit in this position here, which I think is much better. It'd be over the bars as opposed to being back here. So I'm going to cut it out, and I'll show you once I've got it roughly cut out what I'm going to do. Okay, so I've traced around the template onto the aluminium. I've stuck it near the edge because I imagine from here this would be pretty easy to cut out and not too difficult. And then being aluminium, I think between files and a sanding disc, we should be able to get a pretty decent finish on this. Okay, so I'll cut it out. Okay, so there it is. That's just roughly cut out. It's pretty soft metal, as you know, so all I ended up using was a block of wood and a clamp to hold it down on the edge of the bench, and a hacksaw, and that's pretty precise. So I'm just going to spend 5-10 minutes cleaning up these edges, and the hacksaw hasn't done a bad job, but just to round the, just to smarten it up and round the edges over, and I'll show you that in 2 seconds. Well, there it is. So I've sanded the edges down nice and smooth, rounded the corners, and it's come up really well actually. I quite like that. So what I'm going to do now is just punch these holes and drill these out, and then I'm going to attempt the bends. Well, looking how soft it is, it shouldn't be too bad, but there's going to be one bend over here to 45 degrees, and then there's going to be 2 45s, if you can just see that on the card. Something like, ooh, this isn't easy. Something along those lines, if you can imagine that. Something like that. So anyway, so I'll get the holes drilled and then we'll have a look at how we're going to do that. I've drilled the holes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And what I've marked out here now is where the bends will be. So there's 1, 2, and the final one here. Now I think the way to bend it is to bend it in this order, 1, 2, 3, because this is going to be bending away 45 degrees. And this one will bend it back 45 degrees to give it that step that I'm looking for. And then I think the final one will be to be able to get a block in here and then to fold that away that way. at 45 degrees that way, and that should be pretty straightforward. What I'm going to use is a couple of offcuts of the wood, so I'll be able to use a G-clamp in there somehow and then just fold it around. So what I'll do is I'll clamp it up on the line and just try and ease it over. It's really not you know, it's not hard metal, this, so it should be strong enough for the bracket, but it should be easy enough to bend. So I'll have a go on one. Okay, so what I've done is, you see that I've got 2 blocks of oak there with a G-clamp tightened down to the line, and I'm going to try and bend that forward there 45 degrees. So let's have a look. So the first bend went fine, just 2 thumbs, medium pressure over to 45. So I've got it clamped into the second line. Just remember to bend it the right way, so it's going back towards me now. So you end up theoretically back where you started. That's exactly what I wanted. So what you've ended up doing is bending it down 45 and back to 45, so we end up with, as you can see, a straight flat, maybe a little high, but that's not a problem. We just tweak that at the end. So what's left is to push this forward, and again the reason why is I'm going to show you back on the bike. When that now clamps onto here, do you see that kick 45 brings it back towards the bar, and the 45 bend of the top plate will rest it back next to the reservoir, which is exactly where I'm trying to get it. Let's see. So I've got to find one clamped in. As you can see, it was easy to get the blocks up to the line and got it clamped right onto the line. So I'm just going to fold that backwards. Well, it's any angle you prefer. I'm saying 45. I imagine 45 to 50 degrees should be fine. Let's have a go. That's it. That seems to have worked out quite well. So let's just offer it up to the bike and see if where that's going to sit. So there's the original, well, the holes for the lever to be bolted into. So that's going to be roughly there with the standoff spacers, and that will sit there. Now that can be sort of manipulated once it's in place, but that's come up really well. I mean, that's so much better than having it dangle down here. So right, so what I'm going to do now is give it a good old a Scotch Brite and get it up and cleaned, try and fit it, and then I'm going to decide what I'm going to do about the finishing. Here it is, loosely fitted, bolts go in fine. I've not got the spacer on the bottom one, it's just to see where it sits. And if you have a look there, it comes out, there'll be a spacer at the bottom as well. It kicks towards the bar, maybe a smidge, it's not touching the bar, but I can just bend that back if I like, and then ease this forward like that. So from above you've got the reservoir to the right, and it'll sit on here. Again, you can bend that further down, which I might. Well, there's a cable there. Do you know, I think that's pretty much bang on. Right, so I'm going to give it a little sanding down with some fine just to get it all nice and matte finished, and then I'm going to see what I come up with for a finish. So we'll get to that in a second. There it is. Now I didn't finish it at all because I didn't have any paint or any way of finishing it off. So I've just brushed it in like a matte finish, which kind of matches the bracket here. And there's lots of silvery bits on this bike, so I don't particularly mind it like that. But I have to say, I think it came out really well. Let's show you a close-up of that. So that's bolted down. I've not tightened it all the way down now, just to show you. It's thick. I left it thick here. I mean, you could make this thin if you didn't want it so bulky, but being only 1.5 mil, I just wanted to keep some strength in here. But this is fine. I love it. I think it's perfect. It's come out exactly how I thought it would. So there you go. You see the spacers here, kicking it out and then bringing it back in, and exactly alongside. You see that? Exactly alongside, and I bent it a little bit further forward just to flatten it out more, so it sits there like that. And from the front, there it is. I have to say, I'm really pleased, and I've got a sheet of aluminium, so I might make some other parts at some point. But yeah, I think that's the bracket you need to have with a Ducati Scrambler, if you've of course got it on the right, or you just make the opposite for the left. What do you think?